We present the original stories of the late Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, dramatized anew with Caitlin Drader as Sherlock Holmes, Kirsten Krasikoff as Dr. Watson, and today, Delaney Rose Cooper as Professor Moriarty.
It is with a heavy heart that I come before you with the last adventure of my friend Sherlock Holmes that I shall be able to relate. I have tried in my humble way to chronicle some of our exploits together, to demonstrate the singular gifts of that most remarkable of women. It lies with me now to tell you what occurred between Holmes and her arch-enemy, Professor Moriarty, when at last they came face to face.
Miss Sherlock Holmes, your efforts on the side of law and order have seriously inconvenienced me. The situation between us is becoming an impossible one, Miss Holmes. It simply cannot go on. One or the other of us must die. Must die, Miss Holmes.
It was in the spring of 1891. You will remember, perhaps, that after my marriage and return to private practice, Holmes and I had drifted apart a little. I followed the newspaper reports of her cases, of course, and called on her quite often at the old rooms in Baker Street. Even so, however, many weeks would sometimes elapse between our meetings, and so it was with some surprise one April evening that I looked up and saw her standing before me in my study.
Good evening, Watson.
Ah, good evening, Holmes.
Have you a cigarette for me?
Holmes, it. Great heavens, man, how ill you look.
Oh, dare I say it, I've been using myself up rather too freely of late, old friend. You've no objection if I close your window shutters?
No, of course not. Here, you're not afraid of anything, are you?
Well, to tell you the truth, I am, rather.
That's not like you, Holmes. What is it?
Air guns.
Air guns? What on earth do you mean?
There's a new deadly type of air gun, Watson, which has been specially designed by an old acquaintance of ours.
Who? What? Professor Moriarty? It could only be she from your tone.
The same. A match. Give me a match, will you, my dear fellow?
Yes, of course.
Oh, thank you. Is Mr. Watson at home?
Oh, no. He's on a visit to an aunt. We're quite alone.
Oh, good. Good. That makes it easier for me to propose that you should come away with me for a few days.
Oh, delighted. But where?
Oh, the continent. Somewhere abroad.
What? Abroad?
Is that whiskey in the decanter there?
Yes. Now look here, Holmes. What's all this about? There's something more serious in your manner than...
You never did quite believe in all the iniquities of Moriarty, did you, Watson? You said so more than once.
I thought you exaggerated a bit. After all, Professor Moriarty is a respectable figure in public life.
Just so, and that's the very genius of the woman. Even you, Watson, knowing me as you do, can't quite believe me when I tell you that she corrupts all of London with her evil influences.
Oh, I can't quite believe that.
Oh, of course, to the world, she's still the professor. A great mathematician. She's respectable.
But what real proof have you that she's anything else?
None.
Well,
at least, not until this last month. And even now, the chain isn't quite complete. But 3 days more, and I shall have her, Watson. 3 days more, if I live to see them.
You can't seriously suppose that your life's in danger, Holmes.
No.
Oh, you always love to be melodramatic.
Melodramatic? Listen, Watson, this very morning, in those old rooms of ours in Baker Street, I saw her, face to face, and I spoke to her.
Moriarty?
Your distinguished professor, within her, a criminal strain of the most diabolic kind. The great white dome of a forehead, those hooded eyes, and the white face pushed forward, oscillating from side to side like a snake's.
Oh, of course, if you believe the old heresy of physiognomy.
It isn't only that. Of course not. I worked for years to follow 1,000 different threads, and every one of them has led to Moriarty. She's the Napoleon of crime, Watson, the secret organizer of almost everything evil that goes undetected in this great city of ours. There she sits, motionless, like a spider in the center of its web, a web with 1,000 strands, and she controls them, every one. But slowly, very slowly, my own secret plans to expose her have borne fruit. Every day my net is drawing tighter, and she knows it, Watson. She knows the danger she's in. And that's why today she came to see me. I was playing my violin, as you know I do often when I want to think, and then suddenly there she was, standing in my doorway, with her white face swaying in an evil way, peering at me with her hooded eyes.
Good morning.
Professor Moriarty, good morning to you.
Miss Sherlock Holmes, I believe. How very charmingly you play.
How kind of you to say so. Won't you be seated, Professor Moriarty? I can spare you just 5 minutes.
That's singularly good of you. Thank you. I will sit down. May I say something personal, Miss Holmes?
Certainly.
I'm surprised to discover that you have rather less cranial development than one might have expected.
Whereas you, on the contrary, have rather more I had imagined, Professor. You will recollect, I'm sure, however, that Beethoven's outdid both of us. However, our personal characteristics are hardly relevant to the present situation. What have you really got to say to me?
Well, perhaps. I only suggested, of course. Perhaps it is a dangerous habit to finger loaded firearms in the pockets of one's dressing gown, Miss Holmes.
Ah, evidently you share that dangerous habit, Professor. I see that you keep your hand in the pocket of your morning coat. Supposedly we lay our pistols and our cards on the table.
By all means. I was about to suggest it myself. Ah, I see you favour the Mauser type, Miss Holmes, and without a silencer. You must permit me to present you some time with one of these small devices of my own design. They're quite convenient in avoiding unpleasant noise, you know.
How very kind of you, Professor. You must ask the hangman to deliver it to me as your last request.
You evidently don't know me, Miss Holmes.
On the contrary, I think I know you better than you know yourself. I wouldn't take that gun up with yours, Professor. I've already got you covered with mine.
So I perceive, but I assure you it was only to give a harmless demonstration.
Of the silencer?
Of my own small accomplishments as a marksman, Miss Holmes. I've read in those accounts of Dr. Watson, that somewhat bovine,
I beg your pardon.
that no doubt amiable friend of yours, that those marks on the wall there are made from your indoor revolver practice.
Quite so. The initials there, VR, Victorian Regina. God save Her Majesty.
Now that I see them, it seems perhaps they're not quite as symmetrical as they might be. One side of the V is a little short, I think. Permit me to correct the slip.
Admirable, Professor Moriarty. You were perfectly right, of course. That little mistake has now been rectified. I would like to, however, if I may approve upon it. Your bullock mark is perhaps a shade smaller than my own. Permit me?
Admirable, Miss Holmes.
Yes, precisely. Above your mug, Professor. The exact spot, I think. No. Pray I don't look alarmed. My good landlady is just quite accustomed to that noise. We shall not be disturbed.
I'm very glad of it, for what I have to say is not without importance, Miss Holmes. Shall we stop our fencing and begin?
By all means, if you will permit me first to correct one statement that you just made now.
Well, ma'am?
With the reference to my friend, Dr. Watson, I am afraid I can hardly permit the adjective bovine.
Oh?
In her accounts of my humble exploits, she has been good enough to exaggerate my own achievements, and has always been unduly modest about herself. She is the most upright and honorable woman, Professor, and that is very close to my heart. You may say what you will about me, but I can't allow the derogatory words about her.
Very well, Miss Holmes. I apologize. We who are about to die salute her. At least, you do.
You are very certain, aren't you, Professor Moriarty, that it is I who am going to die?
There's no other course, unless you listen to reason. The situation between us, Miss Holmes, is becoming an impossible one. It simply cannot go on.
It won't, I assure you. These past few months I've been working to put an end to it all at the earliest possible moment.
And you have very nearly undone the careful endeavour of a lifetime, ma'am. Or at least have seriously threatened it.
No, don't move your pistol again.
I'm only taking out my memorandum book.
I beg your pardon?
I find it recorded here that you first crossed my path on the 4th of January, Holmes. On the 23rd you incommoded me. By the middle of February I was seriously inconvenienced by you. At the end of March I was absolutely hampered. And now, at the close of April, I find myself placed in such a position through your continual persecution that I am in positive danger of losing my liberty.
That was certainly the end I had in view.
Then you must drop it, Miss Holmes. You really must, you know.
Not till after Monday, Professor. You know as well as I do that you've made a slip. One single tiny slip. For years I've been aware of you, Moriarty. At the center of your organization. Forgeries, murder cases, robberies, and 1,000 crimes planned by you, and 100 agents carried them out. Your subordinates were caught sometimes, but you never were. And yet, you know, you made that slip. That single tiny slip. And you know as well as I do that it will destroy you. In 3 more days, my evidence will be complete, and I shall have you exposed, brought to trial, condemned, and hanged. And you can't do nothing whatever to prevent it. My will is inflexible.
And so is mine. 3 days, do you say? Then before they're out, the end will come. One or the other of us must die, ma'am.
Quite so. The 5 minutes is up, Professor, and I must really ask you to excuse me. In the pleasure of our conversation, I'm afraid that I've neglected business of importance elsewhere.
Very well, then. Seems a pity, Miss Holmes, but I've done what I could. I admit that it's been an intellectual pleasure to me to see the way in which you've grappled with this affair, but I tell you solemnly, Sherlock Holmes, that if you are clever enough to bring destruction on me, you may rest assured that I shall do as much to you.
You have paid me several compliments during this interview, Professor. Let me pay you one in return when I say that if I were assured of the former eventuality, I would most cheerfully accept the latter.
I can promise you the one, but not the other. Good day, Miss Holmes.
Oh, your pestle, Professor. You may need it before Monday.
Thank you.
Good day, Professor.
I think goodbye is the word, Miss Sherlock Holmes. Goodbye.
And so it will, as you see, Watson, that singular interview with the greatest criminal of all time.
And her with the greatest detective.
Oh, thank you, my dear fellow.
But what are you going to do, Holmes?
I told you. We leave for the continent. Moriarty's not the woman to let the grass grow under her feet. Already 1 or 2 accidents have nearly befallen me today.
Upon my soul!
Yes, the police are gathering all my evidence against her. Everything will be complete in 3 days short. Meanwhile, I can only lie low. Are you able to leave your practice to come with me?
I have an accommodating neighbour.
Ah, dear Watson, I knew I could count on you. All right, then. Now, these are your instructions. Listen most carefully.
Instructions, Holmes?
I assure you they are most necessary. Tomorrow morning at 8:45, you will take a hansom cab.
I'll arrange for one to call.
No, you really must obey. To the letter, Watson. You will leave the house alone tomorrow morning, and neither the first nor the second cab will present itself at the rank.
Very well, Holmes.
Hand the address to the cabman written on the slip of the paper and tell him not to throw it away.
Then I'll drive. I'll take it. To Victoria Station?
On the contrary, you drive to the Strand end of the Loworth Arcade.
I see. And then?
Have your fare ready, and the instant of your cab stops, pay him and dash through the arcade, timing yourself to reach the other side exactly at 9:15.
Yes, but my dear Holmes...
Listen, man, carefully listen. It's vital. Our lives depend on it. When you get there, you'll find a broth man standing close to the curb, driven by a fellow with a black cloak tripped with red. Say nothing. Simply jump in, and he'll drive you to the Victoria in time for the Continental Express.
And where shall I meet you, Holmes?
The second coach from the front of the train. A first-class carriage reserved for us. Good night, Watson. And, as you value our lives, don't forget a single word of my instructions.
No, of course not, Holmes.
Until we meet tomorrow, then.
Until we meet.
Tune in next week as we find out if Miss Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson catch up with the devious Professor Moriarty.